Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's reading. I am reading from Artemis Fowl by Ian Colfer, and I am finishing up chapter 7 today. "The safe room!" exclaimed Butler, quickening his pace. His instinct was to go in all guns blazing, but training took over. Fairy hardware was the most definitely superior to his own, and who knew how many barrels were aimed at the other side of that door right now? No caution was most definitely the best part of valor in this particular situation. He placed a palm against the wood, feeling for vibration. Nothing. No machinery then. Butler curled his finger around the knob, twisting gently. With his other hand, he drew a Sig Sauer automatically from his shoulder holster. No time to fetch the dart rifle. He would have to shoot to kill. The door swung open noiselessly, as Butler knew it would, having oiled every hinge in the house before. Before him was, well, to be honest, Butler wasn't quite sure what it was. If he didn't know better, that is, at first glance, he would have sworn that thing resembled nothing more than an enormous quivering. Suddenly, the thing exploded, jetsoning an amazing amount of tunnel waste directly at the unfortunate manservant. It was like being battered with 100 sledgehammers simultaneously. Butler was lifted bodily and flung against the wall. And as he lay there, consciousness slipping away from him, he prayed that Master Artemis hadn't managed to capture that moment on video. Hallie was weakening. The bed frame was nearly twice her body weight, and the ridges were tearing cruel welts in her palms. But she couldn't stop now, not when she was so close. She slammed the posts into the concrete again. A cloud of gray dust spiraled around her legs. Any second now, Fowl would tumble to her plan, and she'd get the hypodermic treatment again. But until then, she gritted her teeth against the pain, heaving the bed frame to knee height. Then she saw it, a sliver of brown among the gray. Could it be true? Pain forgotten, Captain Shore dropped the bed, sinking quickly to her knees. There was indeed a small patch of earth poking through the cement. Holly fumbled the acorn from her boot, clasping it tightly in bloody fingers. "I return you to the earth," she whispered, warming her fists into the tight space, "and claim the gift that is my right." Nothing happened for a heartbeat, perhaps two. Then Holly felt the magic rush up her arm like a jolt from an electrified troll fence. The shock sent her spinning across the room. For a moment, the world swirled in a disconcerting kaleidoscope of color, but when it settled, Holly was no longer the defeated elf she had been. "Right, Master Fowl," she grinned, watching the blue sparks of fairy magic seal her wounds. "Let's see what I have to do to get your permission to leave this place." "Drop everything," sulked Juliet. "Drop everything and check the prisoner." She flicked blonde tresses expertly over her shoulder. "He must think I'm his maid or something." She hammered on the cell door with the flat of her hand. "I'm coming in now, fairy girl, so if you're doing anything embarrassing, please stop." Juliet punched the combination into the keypad. "And no, I don't have your vegetables or your washed fruit, but it's not my fault. Artemis insisted I come right down." Juliet stopped talking because there was nobody listening. She was preaching to an empty room. She waited for her brain to pass on an explanation. Nothing came. Eventually, the notion to take another look filtered down. She took a tentative step into the concrete cube. Nothing. Only a slight shimmering in the shadows, like a mist. It was probably these stupid glasses. How are you supposed to see anything wearing mirrored sunglasses underground? And they were so 90s. They weren't even retro yet. Juliet glanced guiltily at the monitor. Just a quick peek. What harm could it do? She whipped up the frame, sending her eyeballs spinning around the room. In that instant, a figure materialized before her, just stepped out of the air. It was Holly, and she was smiling. "Oh, it's you. How did you—" The fairy interrupted with a wave of her hand. "Why don't you take off those glasses, Juliet? They really don't suit you." She's right, thought Juliet. And what a lovely voice, like a choir all in its own. How could you argue with a voice like that? Sure, caveman glasses off. Cool voice, by the way. Do-re-mi and all that. Holly decided not to try to decipher Juliet's comments. It was hard enough when the girl was in full control of her brain. "Now, a simple question." "No problem. What a great idea." "How many people in the house?" Juliet thought. One, and one, and one, and another one. No, Mrs. Fowl wasn't there. 3, she said finally. Me and Butler and, of course, Artemis. Mrs. Fowl was here, but she went bye-bye. And then she went bye-bye. Juliet giggled. She made a joke, a good one, too. Holly drew a breath to ask for clarification, then thought better of it. A mistake, as it turned out. Has anyone else been here? Anyone like me? Juliet chewed her lip. There was one little man in a uniform like yours. Not cute, though. Not one bit. Just shouted and smoked a smelly cigar. Terrible complexion, red as a tomato. Holly almost smiled. Rude had come himself. No doubt the negotiations had been disastrous. No one else? Not that I know of. If you see that man again, tell him to lay off the red meat. He's just a coronary waiting to happen. Holly swallowed a grin. Juliet was only human, she knew, who would probably more lucid under Mesmer. Okay, I'll tell him. Now, Juliet, I want you to stay in my room, and no matter what you hear, don't come out. Juliet frowned. This room? It's so boring. No TV or anything. Can I go up to the lounge? No, you have to stay here. Anyway, they've just installed a wall television. Cinema size. Wrestling 24 hours a day. Juliet almost fainted with pleasure. She ran into her cell, gasping as her imagination supplied the pictures. Holly shook her head. Well, she thought, at least one of us is happy. Mulch gave his rear end a shake to dislodge any clumps of earth. If only his mother could see him now, spraying mud on the mud people. That was irony, or something like it. Mulch had never been big on vocabulary in school. That or poetry. He'd never seen the point. Down in the mines, there were only two phrases of importance. Look, gold, and cave in, everybody out. No hidden meanings there, or rhymes. The dwarf buttoned his back flap, which had been blasted open by the gale emanating from his nether regions. Time to make a run for it. Whatever hope he had of escaping undiscovered had been blown. Literally. Mulch retrieved his earpiece, screwing it firmly into his ear. Well, you never knew. Even the LEP might prove useful. And when I get my hands on you, convict, you'll wish you'd stay down in those mines. Mulch sighed. Ah, well, nothing new there then. Clasping the safe's treasures tightly in his fist, the dwarf turned to retrace his steps. To his utter amazement, there was a human entangled in the banisters. Mulch was not one bit surprised that his recyclings had managed to hurl the elephantine mudman several yards through the air. Dwarf gas had been known to cause avalanches in the Alps. What did surprise him was the fact that the man had managed to get so close to him in the first place. You're good, said Mulch, wagging a finger at the unconscious bodyguard. But nobody takes a body blow from Mulch Diggums and stays on their feet. The mudman stirred, the whites of his eyes showing beneath fluttering lids. Root's voice crackled in the dwarf's ears. Get a move on, Mulch. Diggums, before that mudman gets up and rearranges your innards. He took out an entire retrieval team, you know. Mulch swallowed, his bravado suddenly deserting him. An entire retrieval team? Maybe I should get back underground, for the good of the mission. Skipping hurriedly around the groaning bodyguards, Mulch took two steps at a time. No point in worrying about creaking stairs when you've just sent the intestinal equivalent of hurricane hail scurrying around the corridors. He almost reached the cellar door when a figure shimmered into focus before him. Mulch recognized it as his arresting officer from the Renaissance Master's smuggling case. Captain Short? Mulch! I wasn't expecting to see you. The dwarf shrugged. Julius had a dirty job. Someone had to do it. I get it, Holly nodded. You've already lost your magic. Smart. What'd you find out? Mulch showed Holly his find. This was in the safe. Oh, a copy of the book, gasped Holly. No wonder we're in this fix. We're playing into his hands all along. Mulch opened the cellar door. Shall we? I can't. I'm under eyeball orders not to leave the house. You magic types and your rituals. You have no idea how liberating it is to be rid of all that mumbo-jumbo. A series of sharp noises drifted down from the upper landing. It sounded like a troll thrashing around in a crystal emporium. We can debate ethics at a later date. Right now, I suggest we make ourselves scarce. Mulch nodded. Agreed. This guy took out an entire retrieval squad, apparently. Holly paused and half shielded. An entire squad? Fully equipped. I wonder. She continued her fade out, and the last thing to go was her widening grin. Mulch was tempted to hang around. There weren't many things more fun to watch than a heavily armored recon officer going to town on a bunch of unsuspecting humans. By the time Captain Short got through with this foul character, he'd be begging her to get out of his manor. The foul character in question was watching it all from the surveillance room. There was no denying it. Things were not good. Not good at all, but certainly not irredeemable. There was still hope. Artemis cataloged the events of the last few minutes. The manor's security had been compromised. The safe room was in a shambles, blown apart by some sort of fairy flatulence. Butler laid unconscious, possibly paralyzed by the same gaseous anomaly. His hostage was loose in the house, her fairy powers restored to her. There was an unsightly creature in leather pants, burying holes beneath the foundation with no apparent regard for the fairy commandments, and the people had retrieved a copy of the book, one of the several copies as it happened, including one on disc in a Swiss vault. Artemis's finger combed an errant strand of dark hair. He would have to dig very deep to uncover the good in this particular scenario. He took several deep breaths, finding his shy, as Butler had taught him. After several moments' contemplation, he realized that these factors meant little to the overall strategies of both sides. Captain Short was still trapped in the manor, and the time stoppage period was running out. Soon the LEP would have no option but to launch their biobomb, and that was when Artemis Fowl would unveil his coup de grace. Of course, the whole thing depended on Captain Root. If Root was as intellectually challenged as he looked, it was quite possible the entire scheme could collapse around his ears. Artemis hoped fervently that someone on the fairy team had the wit to spot the blunder he'd made during the negotiation session. Mulch unbuttoned his back flap. Time to suck some dirt, as they said down in the mines. The trouble with the dwarf tunnels was that they were self-sealing, so that if you had to go back the way you came, there was a whole new burrow to be excavated. Some dwarfs retraced their steps exactly, chewing through the less compact and pre-digested dirt. Mulch preferred to dig a fresh tunnel. For some reason, eating the same dirt twice didn't appeal to him. Unhinging his jaw, the dwarf pointed himself torpedo-like through the holes in the floorboard. His heart calmed immediately as the scent of minerals filled his nostrils. Safe. He was safe. Nothing could catch a dwarf underground, not even Skyland rockworm. That was, of course, if he managed to get underground. 10 very powerful fingers gripped Mulch by the ankles. This just wasn't the dwarf's day. First wart-faced, now this homicidal human. Some people never learn. Usually mud people. "Hey, go," he mumbled, unhinged jaw flapping uselessly. "Not a chance," came the reply. "You're the only way you're leaving this house is in a body bag." Mulch could feel himself being dragged backwards. This human was strong. There weren't many creatures that could dislodge a dwarf with a grip on something. He scrambled in the dirt, cramming handfuls of wine-impregnated clay into his cavernous mouth. There was only one chance. "Come on, you little goblin, out of there." Goblin? Mulch would have been indignant had he not been busy chewing clay to eject his enemy. The human stopped talking. Possibly he noticed the flap, and probably what was behind it. No doubt what had happened in the safe room was coming back to him. Oh. What would have followed the O is anyone's guess, but I'd be willing to bet it wouldn't have been "dearie me." As it happened, Butler had never had time to finish his expletive because he wisely chose at that moment to relinquish his grip. A wise choice indeed, because it coincided with the instant Mulch decided to launch his earthen offense. A clump of compacted clay sped like a cannon directly at the spot where Butler's head had been barely a second previously. Had it still occupied that space, the impact would have separated it from Butler's shoulders. An ignoble end for a bodyguard of his caliber. As it was, the soggy missile barely grazed his ear. Nevertheless, the force was sufficient to spin Butler like an ice skater, landing him on his rump for the second time in as many minutes. By the time his vision had settled, the dwarf had disappeared into the maelstrom of churning muck. Butler decided not to attempt pursuit. Dying below ground was not very high on his things-to-do list, but there would be another day. Fairly, he thought grimly, and there was to be, but that's another story. Mulch's momentum propelled him underground. He'd gone several yards along the loomy vein before he realized that no one was following. Once the taste of earth had settled his heart rate, he decided it was time to implement his escape plan. The dwarf altered his course, chewing his way towards the rabbit warren he noted earlier. With any luck, the centaur hadn't run a seismic test on the manor grounds, or his ruse might be discovered. He'd have to bank on the fact that they had more important things to worry about than a missing prisoner. There shouldn't be any problem deceiving Julius, but the centaur, he was a smart one. Mulch's internal compass steered him true, and within minutes he could feel the gentle vibrations of the rabbits loping along the tunnels. From here on, timing was crucial if the illusion was to be effective. He slowed his digging rate, poking the soft clay gently until his fingers breached the tunnel wall. Mulch was careful to look the other way because whatever he saw would be showing up on the view screen back in LEP HQ. Laying his fingers on the tunnel floor like an upturned spider, Mulch waited. It didn't take long. In seconds, he felt the rhythmical thump of an approaching rabbit. The instant the animal's hind legs brushed the trap, he tightened his powerful digits around its neck. The poor animal never had a chance. Sorry, friend, thought the dwarf, if there was any other way. Pulling the rabbit's body through the hole, Mulch rehinged his jaw and began screaming, Cave in! Help! Help! Now for the tricky bit. With one hand, he agitated the surrounding earth, bringing showers of it crumbling around his own head. With the other hand, he popped the iris cam out of his left eye and slid it into the rabbit's. Given the almost total darkness and landfill confusion, it could be almost impossible to spot the switch. Julius, please help me! Mulch, what's happening? What's your status? What's my status? Thought the dwarf incredulously. Even in times of supposed crisis, the commander couldn't abandon his previous protocol. The dwarf dragged his final scream out. Petering off to a gargling rattle. A bit melodramatic, perhaps, but Mulch could never resist theatrics. With a last regretful glance at the dying animal, he unhinged his jaw and finned off to the southeast. Freedom beckoned. And that, my friends, is the end of the chapter. So we will begin chapter 8 tomorrow. I hope everyone is well, and I'll see you then. Bye.